Lesson 7, Illustrative Portraiture using white pencil or chalk on black paper. Begin by collecting as many art materials as you have that you would like to test out on this black paper. I'm using chalk and smudging it, white colouring pencil, different colours of colouring pencils. And actually the different colours of colouring pencils turn out really well, I think. White paint marker, it's a Posca paint marker, and that works really well as well. So I choose to use colouring pencil. Let's start with a white colouring pencil. I'm just doing a line drawing. I don't actually measure for this drawing, but I do recommend measuring, of course, because you will get a greater likeness, greater accuracy. My portrait isn't the spitting image of the girl I'm drawing, but it's a decent enough likeness. So there will be a lot of things in this demonstration that apply. So previous tips on drawing that I've given you, that would also apply to this white on black demonstration. So the tip of your pencil will give you more of a sharp, defined, and in this case whiter edge. And then the side of your pencil, ideally use that for the skin tones, so larger sweeping skin tones. And you would think about where you're holding your pencil as well, like I've sort of given you tips about that in previous demonstrations. So you can return to those drawing demonstrations again. Now I am introducing different greys. I'm lucky that I have a lot of materials at home, so I have a lot of different greys. I have a couple of mid-tones and a darker warm grey, and that helps me build up tone really easily. Now if you just have a white, vary the pressure that you put on your pencil, and that will give you a variance of tones. See, the more pressure with the white pencil that you put on it, the whiter the area. So for the highlights, put a lot of pressure on your pencil or chalk, and if you're using chalk, you might smudge for the skin tone and build it up that way. So really pressure is key, and how you hold your pencil, whether it's up at the top of the barrel or down at the bottom of the barrel, you'll get more accuracy with your tip, and to hold it quite close to the tip. I'm just building up the skin tone slowly. So like in watercolor painting, the way we use the white paper to be part of the image, we're using the black paper as part of the image here. So the black paper works for the hair, the lips at the moment, though I've already lightened those there. The eyebrows, any of the dark areas, even the sunken area under the cheekbone, you can still see the black paper coming through. This is quite a more illustrative, stylized portrait. So I've put half of the background as white. That's just colouring pencil in the background, and then I have that nice white outline of her face on the left, and I'm just going to pretty much leave it like that. I'll go over the white on the right again. For those highlights, those really bright highlights, I've added in the Posca paint marker, and I've dotted in the paint marker, so using a sort of a stippling or pointillism effect. And it does look quite stylized in reality, but it works. It reads as highlights. You will need to sort of blend that paint marker, particularly on the cheekbone there. So you would get your white colouring pencil and sort of diffuse that, blend it outwards. So it's not massively blended, but it's somewhat blended outwards. And then just a bit more notes about blending. Try not to jump too soon from one colour tone to the next. So at the moment the neck is looking really stripy, but I'll work on that. There will be areas, particularly the highlights that I've pointed out, where the tone does jump quite quickly from one tone to the next, but that works there. But then on the rest of the skin, usually you want to move slowly from one tone into the next tone, so gradually changing tone from let's say a lighter tone into a mid-tone into a dark tone. Obviously the jawline is quite dark, but as we approach the jawline it will be a little bit darker. So there are some jumps in tone, but try not to be too extreme. So I'm adding in highlights into the hair. That's just not dyed highlights, just light into the hair. And I start with quite a dark grey and then move into a mid-tone and add in some light tones as well. So again, if you're just using a white colouring pencil or a white chalk, vary your pressure to get different tones. Also, if you're using a chalk, you might want to spray your image at the end, and be careful with transference from the side of your hand onto any of the black areas. I even do that a bit with the colouring pencil, so ideally put a bit of paper under your hand. It helps a lot. Helps to stop the transference. Just lighten up the brow or the temple and around by the jaw, and working on the ear a bit as well. I just want to sharpen up that line on the right hand side of the head, just to make it more graphic and make it pop a bit more. So I'm working on the neck now. And again, there is movement in the neck because her head is twisted. So there are some sort of creases in the neck because of that twist. And those creases are quite dark, but generally you want it to be quite blended around the neck. As well, the way, I'm drawing in the pencil in a sort of a semicircular way around the cheek or under the cheekbone sort of echoes the way the skin sits on top of the muscles and the bone structure. So where I can see quite visibly her pores there, and that tells me like the direction of her skin. So I think it helps to sort of make it look realistic as well. If you're so think about what way you're moving your pencil. And likewise with the neck, I'm sort of moving the pencil in the direction that the skin on the neck is sort of sitting. I hope that makes sense. So I have this black pen that I'm using as well. It's a Faber-Castell brush pen. And so that kind of helps me add in extra stray hairs here and there. I mean, you could have just left those black, but it's hard to always be very accurate in that decision making all the time when you're drawing. So it's good to be able to sort of push and pull with your drawings. So I've added in those highlights on the neck with little dots of paint. I think I pretty much leave the blending of the neck here as it is, or I don't do too much more. And in retrospect, I think I should have blended it a bit better. So I'm adding in those straggly stray hairs with the black brush pen, and I'm adding them in also to the side of the hairline. The back of her hair actually is quite messy, but it's lovely. So I really like that messiness, so I'm going to add it in. And just if you're going to do that as well, what I would say is just observe the sort of shape and flow of the hair, and where some hairs meet, it looks more clumpy. So don't just sort of randomly put twiddly bits of hair. Try and observe a little bit, because it will look more realistic then. So yeah, I do go back into the neck to blend it a bit, but I still think it needs a bit more work. So really now I'm sort of just tweaking the final bits. It's nearly finished. So I add a bit more white into her teeth. But the teeth aren't fully white. They are shaded by the lips a bit. Like the eye is as well. The eye isn't fully white. I've popped a bit of white in there. So I just straightened up the edge of the arm there, the end of the image. And now I'm putting in just a small bit of detail of her clothing. So I'm using my darkest grey and I'm just trying to find that rhythm of the ribbing on her clothing. It becomes quite waxy and oily when you're using these colouring pencils, but it's a lovely texture. You know, you can build up a lot of texture with it. It's lovely. I'm taking a bit of artistic liberty with exaggerating the highlights on her face. If you are absolutely sick of doing portraiture, just use these materials for something like a still life or whatever you fancy. Drawing glass with black and white could be quite nice, so a glass jug. And maybe put something black in the background when you're drawing it. Colouring pencils, yeah, like you can build up this oily sort of texture. It becomes quite painterly. So it's in a way it's sort of richer than normal pencil drawing. So again, I emphasize patience and observation. Keep going over things, and sometimes people are afraid to overwork things, but it's good to keep observing and pushing it and trying. So that's it, a bit of a close-up there on those little dots that I was talking about. So thanks, and I hope it goes well for you.